So, George, let's start with what your off-season, how your off-season started, and tell me coming into, mid-January, you guys as an organization, you meet, and what is your priority at that point? What are your priorities?
Yeah, I mean, the number one priority is to find a head coach and find the right head coach, find the best leader, for this organization and franchise. So it started with the head coach and the search. Obviously, we with Nathaniel Hackett being named our head coach. And then from there, it was really trying to solidify the quarterback position. And so those were really the two number one things that we had to get solved this offseason. And obviously we did that.
When you hired Nathaniel Hackett, the football world thought, Aaron Rodgers. They're focused, laser focused on Aaron Rodgers. Were you?
Not at all. I mean, totally independent. I mean, it had nothing to do with Nathaniel Hackett. He blew us away in the interview process. All the background we got on him had nothing to do with, obviously any player whatsoever. It was just on his leadership and his football knowledge.
So what compelled you, what drew you to Russell Wilson?
Well, he was available, and which was surprising, when I got the call from John and he was available. And obviously it's just everything he's done in his career. He's the amount of wins, the way they've won, the way he carries himself both on and off the field. There's so many things to talk about when you talk about Russell Wilson, the franchise type quarterback. They don't come available every day. So that's just the start of what drew us to Russell Wilson.
As you went down the road with John Schneider, was it smooth? Was it difficult? Was there ever a day that you either hung up the phone or left a meeting with him and said, man, I don't know if this is going to get done?
It was very complicated. It was lengthy negotiations between John and I. The beauty of it is John and I are really good friends. And so, every time, we spoke, it wasn't always about the deal. We had some laughs, we sat down, we talked about a lot of different things, but, it was as smooth as it can be when you're trading some of that magnitude. It's really hard to assess a value for someone like Russell Wilson. And so that's why it took so long. Very complicated deal, but because the person I was negotiating with, it seemed smoother than I anticipated.
When you ended up agreeing to the deal, what was that like, knowing it was going to happen? Where were you at the time when you knew it was going to happen?
I just think I was in my office at my house, sitting in the dark, one evening, Sunday. I think it was maybe a Sunday, Monday evening, just arrived back from the combine. I knew it was really close. And then, the next morning we finalized it, just John and myself, and then that was it. And I was alone in my office then. And so I think coming back from the combine, whatever day that was, I'm kind of losing track that evening. And then the next morning we kind of finalized it. And then, it was, obviously I had to talk to Russ. They gave us permission to speak with Russ. And so it was contingent on my conversation, Coach Hackett's conversation with Russ. So, we had the deal in place contingent on that.
What's the one thing we don't know about this trade? Was there anything kind of deep and dark or quirky about it?
We had a lot of beers discussing this trade at the combine. That's probably what people don't know. We had a little hole in the wall that John found, and it was very quiet. No one knew we were there, and we had some fun, and I think, when you're dealing with someone like John, who's been doing this a long time, who's obviously really bright and brilliant at what he does, but has a really good side to him. So we made some fun out of it. Even though it was long, it was complicated, but we had a good time with it.
Did any part of you ever say, if Russell Wilson is everything we think he is, why does Seattle want to trade him?
A lot of things go through your mind, Peter, when you're working through this, when you give up as much as we did. And, but we talked to a number of people. We watched, about all the tape you could watch on Russell. We did all our background. We feel unbelievable that we're able to get a player of his magnitude. So we feel good. And since he's been here, it's only proved what we thought.
So the football world has changed now. And you now see it's not just Tom Brady who will play this year at age 45, but Drew Brees played until I think he was 41. And a lot of players are talking about playing much longer. Russell Wilson has spoken publicly about that. How much longer do you think he can play at a high level?
I think, you look at his body, you look at his durability, it's been unmatched, with quarterbacks. First 10 years, I think he missed two games, or I don't know how many he missed last year,
right.
But it's remarkable how durable he's been and how he takes care of his body and his obsession with working and working out and being great. So, the sky's the limit for Russell. He can play as long as he wants.
Can you tell me take me into your team right now and tell me a little bit about the impact just having him around your team has made? What sticks out to you?
I just think when your best player is your hardest worker, it kind of carries everyone, takes everyone to a different level. And I think the moment he walked in the building, he did that. He's the first one here in the morning, and that's, everyone kind of says that. It's cliche, but he is. And he's probably the last guy to leave. And just the work he puts into it, I just think that translates to the rest of, the locker room and really the rest of the building. And so just the leadership he's shown thus far. And then when he's on the field, that's easy. That's easy to evaluate, how he throws the ball, how accurate he is. He's still really athletic, the deep ball, incredible deep ball. So that's really easy to evaluate. It's the other things that everyone, the public maybe doesn't see, that we see day in and day out, that I think, hopefully rubs off on this football team.
You're right when you talk about, his durability. I find fairly amazing that since the day he was drafted a decade ago, the Seattle Seahawks have had a total of, hang on, I'm going to get the exact number for you. They have had a total number of games played of 176, and he has started 174 of them.
Yeah, remarkable.
And I think one of the things, the old cliche, one of the most important things about ability is availability. And I think you're getting a guy who you don't have to say, and again, I'm not saying that your backup quarterback's unimportant. I think that's a silly thing to say. But you're saying that all of a sudden, we don't think we're going to use our backup quarterback. And in Denver, since Peyton Manning walked out the door, you've needed sometimes 3 quarterbacks in a year. Yeah. And so I wonder what that does to a personnel person like you, knowing that there's a very good chance that every snap that we line up for, this guy's taking it.
Yeah, I would say, that's in the back of your mind, but, we always prepare for the worst case scenario. We always have to be ready at every position, no matter how durable. And Russell's, probably the most durable quarterback to play in the last 10 years. And, but no, it's comforting to know, but we have to be ready, and we feel good about our backups, if they do have to play.
George, let's talk about, if we can, a little bit about the rest of your team and about the division and where you think you are. You've been in football for a long time. I wonder, as you look at your division, top to bottom, does any division you've been in all your time in the NFL compare to the strength, the overall strength of the AFC West right now?
It's hard to say when you look back all the years, 20-something years in the league. On paper, this division looks great. And Kansas City's really, the only one that's really gone out and done it year in and year out. So, yes, on paper, it looks good. All the teams, all the core 4 really good quarterbacks, franchise-type quarterbacks. And then you look at the off seasons, the arms race that has kind of taken place. But you have to go out and perform. It doesn't mean anything till we go out and play and win football games. And But our division, it is, we're looking forward to it. We embrace the challenge. We know how strong it is. It's hard for me to really compare it to other, divisions I've been in. NFC North had some really good teams back in the day, but we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out.
I think one of the things when you look at your division now is that on a given day, any quarterback could have a top 3 or 4 performance in the NFL. And I remember a year ago talking to you about taking Patrick Surtain. And you were very, very bullish on the fact that last year, looking at your draft board, he was the guy overwhelmingly who you wanted. And one of the things you said to me, I looked it up before we talked, one of the things you said is that the way the NFL game is played, if you have a chance to get a great corner, somebody who you think is going to be a great corner, that becomes almost as valuable as anything that you can add to your team. I want you to look back on that decision that you made and tell me how that reverberates right now, especially in your division with Justin Herbert and Derek Carr and Patrick Mahomes being 6 out of your 17 games every year.
It's huge. And you and I spoke, and Patrick Surtain was the best player on the board at the time we were picking, and have zero regrets. You look how he played. He played like a seasoned vet, like a Pro Bowler his first year, and he's only 22, 23 years old. And he's only going to keep getting better, and just the way he handles them on and off the field. And then you look at our division, obviously, with all those quarterbacks, it's really feels good to have someone like Patrick Surtain and all the other secondary players that we do have. So zero regrets drafting him. I stick by what I said, and feel good about Pat. And I feel good that we have Russell Wilson. We have them both. And can't say that was the plan at the time, but I feel really good with where we're at.
One of the things that I always thought, if you had to make a trade for a big quarterback, that it might cost you a player you really didn't want to trade, like Garrett Bowles, maybe Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton. And I'm not speaking ill of Noah Fant. I'm not speaking ill of Drew Lock. But the point I'm making is you had some cornerstone guys who you were pretty sure you absolutely did not want to trade. Did you think that you ever came close to having to include a player like that, or a player who was really going to cause you a lot of pain in that trade?
Peter, we feel like Noah Fant was a cornerstone player. We did not want to lose Noah Fant, 24-year-old, tight end who has with Pro Bowl potential. Shelby Harris is one of our core players on defense. That was not easy. A really good player. We had to replace Shelby. We had to replace Noah. We had to draft a tight end in the 3rd. We had to sign DJ Jones. So, and then, Drew Lock, we'd love to have kept Drew. Drew's very talented, but we just couldn't. So I would say it wasn't easy to give up the players we gave up. And then the 2 1s and the 2 2s, it was hard. It was hard, but knowing that we're getting Russell Wilson, it made it easier. So I would just say the 3 players we gave up, we felt were cornerstone type players. So it was not easy.
One other acquisition in your offseason I wanted to ask you about, that was Randy Gregory. It seemed to almost come out of nowhere. And I look at it in sort of a 2-pronged way. Obviously, you had to investigate Randy Gregory off the field because he's had his speed bumps. But he gives you the opportunity to, when you had Bradley Chubb and Von Miller, whenever they were healthy together, which wasn't often, that was something that was really dangerous for opposing offenses. Tell me a little bit about how Randy Gregory came together for you.
Well, first and foremost, the tape is really good tape. The pass rush is, we think he's one of the better pass rushers in the NFL. Last year, was his best year, and we had to play against him. We had to game plan against him. So that's the start. We wanted to improve our explosion off the edge. And we felt like in the free agent class, he was the most explosive edge defender. And so first you watch the tape, and then you do all the background. We had a lot of people doing background, talked to a lot of people around the league in Dallas, and felt good. Felt good where Randy was in his life. We felt like he matured and he was a pro. I mean, they loved him there in that building. And so we felt really good about Randy as a person and as a player. And we need it, not only for our division, but for the rest of this, the AFC. There's a lot of great quarterbacks in the AFC, and we needed help on the edge. We have Bradley Chubb. Now we have Randy Gregory, Malik Reed, Jonathan Cooper. So now we have a staple of rushers, and we draft Nick Bonito. And you can't have enough, in not only our division, but in our, in our league. It's a passing league, and there's so many good receivers and good quarterbacks. So you got to get after the quarterback.
There's one other player I wanted to ask you about who I think just kind of scratched the surface last year, and that's Javonte Williams. There's no question at all that even though Nathaniel Hackett is known as a bit of a mad scientist in the passing game, he's got to have a guy who's going to be able to run the ball well. And I look in your second half of the season last year, and I think all but like 3 games, and he ran for between 4 and 7 yards a carry in those games. And I remember watching him last year in your game against Dallas. And it was one of those things where everybody knew he was going to be getting the ball a lot. And you kept feeding him. He gained over 100 yards in that game. And really, he was a huge factor in a win that not many people were expecting. Tell me just a little bit about his development and how you see him fitting in the Hackett offense now.
Yeah, his development is, he's just such a hard worker, such a great person off the field. And then the football character on the field is unmatched. He's such a hard worker, great kid, really smart. And then as a runner, it starts with the vision. He has great vision, great instincts, great short area burst. But the thing that really sets him apart, he's really hard to tackle. He breaks more tackles than any back I've been around. And then he has deceptive speed, and he can catch and he can pass protect, as a rookie. So I think he's going to fit in any offense. He really fits in Coach Hackett's offense. We feel with he and Melvin Gordon, Boone, we have some backs. You need a lot of backs in this league, but we think, our 1-2 and our 3 punch, we have a good staple of runners led, by Javonte, and he's just going to keep getting better. He's learning the league and kind of learning this offense, and I just like the trajectory he's on.
I would assume that when you discuss this job with Nathaniel Hackett, and now that he's been in the building, you understand the importance of a running back in his offense. Can you verbalize that?
Well, you just look what they had in Green Bay. They had Aaron Jones, and they went and drafted the Boston College kids in the second round, and just how they used it. Again, his name's slips me, but look at everywhere Nathaniel's been, going back to Jacksonville, when they went to the AFC Championship game, they had a top 6 offense. They might've been top 3, rushing offense. And everywhere he's been, he's run the ball. So I know he loved the way we ran it with our 2 backs, and this was appealing to him to come here with the talent we had at running back and in the offensive line, the way they blocked.
2 other things I just wanted to ask you, George, about sort of the state of the league and sort of being a GM in this league right now. When you looked at the draft this year and you saw that there was 1 quarterback picked in the top 70 picks, there were no running backs picked in the top 35. Was this draft this year an outlier about how football is judged and scouted now, or do you see something more than just a quirky year as far as the traditional positions that get picked pretty high that maybe won't be getting picked as high every year from now on?
Yeah, running backs really haven't, the last 10 years, there haven't been too many drafted as high, in the top, in the first round, upper first round, just a few. And quarterbacks, I think it's a bit of an outlier. I think, too many teams need them every year in and year out. If you're a team and you really like a quarterback, you're going to take them high. A team needs hope, and you need a quarterback to win in this league. I just think, maybe teams are looking down the line, maybe next year or the year after, looking at those quarterback classes. Maybe they compared them. We weren't in that game, so maybe I don't have a great answer for you, but I do think it's a bit of an outlier. The quarterback's #1 position in sports, and teams are always going to be aggressive to get them. And you can't always get them via trade. You never can get them in free agency. So the draft's really the way most teams will be able to acquire a quarterback.
Last thing, when you got to Denver, that it had been a sort of a frustrating time in trying to find a long-term quarterback. And clearly it occupied John Elway's thoughts probably every day. And I wonder, when you got Russell Wilson, when you were moving close to getting him, you remember any conversations you had with John? You remember talking to John about Russell Wilson?
Yeah,
what if anything was his input?
John was a sounding board throughout the process. It was a tight group that knew about a potential trade. And so I bounced a lot of things off John. He'd been in this seat, he won a Super Bowl, and obviously he's got a great football mind. And he said, go get him. Don't worry about what it takes. Go get him. He knows how hard they are to find. And so he was very good and just said, be aggressive. If you believe in it, and go get them. Don't hesitate. This is a unique situation that doesn't come around very often.
Yeah, and he certainly tried as hard as he could have to go get that quarterback almost every year. So yeah. I have a feeling you probably won't be looking for a quarterback for a few years now. But anyway, George, thank you so much for taking the time and talking. Good luck the rest of the offseason. I'll see you in training camp.
Yeah, Peter, great talking with you.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.